Happy Tuesday, Dan Rubenstein. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. I was just thinking as we started, because this is sort of a leftovers / look ahead show, that it's sort of the opposite of a letdown look ahead sandwich, because we're not let down in any way, but the leftover element, I was thinking about what foods are better left over. Maybe we can circle back to that business term at the end of the episode, but I was just thinking about like chili, brownies, those types of thing where like the flavor just intensifies overnight. And so on that note, maybe the solid verbal flavoring tie has intensified since Saturday night. How about that?
I think it's entirely possible. And you're right. This is that show where we go back through the leftover thoughts. We go through a few odds and ends that we did not have a chance to address. We do take a look forward. We're going to play a game. We got a suggestion from the Verballerhood. It's going to be a jam-packed show here now, as we've had about 2 days to let week 3 percolate.
Yeah,
Think it through. What does this mean, Dan?
Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out.
Without further ado, though, we do have a new Verballer Top 12 poll. This is something that people out at verballers.com can vote on, whether you're a certified or premium Verballer. You go and check out what that means with the ad-free episodes and the bonus content, the Discord access, you name it. There's a bunch of perks that you get when you sign up to be a voter. But we have a new poll. It's a little bit different.
Okay.
Texas is now the new #1 team. That kind of echoes what we have seen in other polling across the college football ether. It's Texas 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Alabama 4. Tennessee has continued its upward trajectory. They are now the new #5 team ahead of Ole Miss and Mizzou. We've got 6 teams, by the way, from the SEC that are in this Verballer Top 12 poll. And then to round things out, we've got Miami at 8, Oregon, your Oregon Ducks, at 9. We've got the Penn State Nittany Lions, my alma mater, at 10, followed by USC and Utah. I don't know if you've got any great reaction to that. I will add that the others receiving votes is quite interesting because we've got K-State and Oklahoma, which were both in that category a week ago. Also, Oklahoma is in there. Also, Nebraska is starting to get some love, and in others receiving votes. Top 12 for Nebraska feels a little rich at this point. We will find out more. We're going to talk about the Illinois game that's going to be played on Friday night. It's a ranked battle between Nebraska and Illinois. We can get to that later on, but nice to see them getting a little bit of love here. Do you have any reaction to this?
I'd like to see more before feeling incredible about Utah in this moment. And I know it's a Cam Rising injury situation. So, yeah, I think Utah should be floating in there. Kansas State's win was very nice against Arizona, so I appreciate them in there. Oklahoma State, I don't know. They've laid some lumber, Ty. But I think it's largely fine. I would probably have USC ahead of Penn State in this moment if this is a week-to-week. I would put USC ahead of Penn State. I might even put USC ahead of Oregon with Oregon's early struggles, but I understand that, obviously Oregon looked a lot stronger. But I don't know, with what USC did against LSU in week 1 and then shut out Utah State, I know there are lingering concerns about their defense. We'll learn a lot more. It's Michigan week, correct?
Correct.
Favored on the road.
Favored on the road.
5.5, 6 points.
Yep.
USC favored coming off of bye. Yeah, I would give consideration there. And obviously Texas making the leap over Georgia. I think I would still take Georgia if we were playing on a neutral site this coming week after what Georgia did against Clemson still in week 1. But I get it. I get Texas's ascent, especially with Arch Manning coming in and losing nothing against a struggling UTSA.
I'll tell you my reaction to this.
Yeah.
Frankly, my reaction in looking at this and seeing how heavy it is with SEC and Big Ten teams.
For sure.
Are we going to get to a point when we're talking about the playoff where both the Big 12 and the ACC only get one team apiece and it's their conference champion?
Right.
Which I don't think anybody wants. I don't want that. But the way that this early season polling is shaking out, it is screaming that that's a possibility. So, again, way too early to make any projections on that front. But if that is the case, and we get one G5 team in, one Big 12 team, and one ACC team, there's going to be a very, very interesting discussion later on in the year about which Big 10 and which SEC teams make it in. This is very, very top heavy now with respect to the top teams in each of those conferences.
I'm circling October 24th in terms of teams not in this top 12 yet. Do you know what October 24th gives us, Ty?
Please tell me.
Pitt hosting Syracuse. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready for the implied ascent of one of those teams into our Verballer top 12. Maybe that week is going to decide big things to me.
We're going to talk about the Syracuse game that's being played late in the week.
That's true.
A little bit later on in this episode as we
An ACC classic.
An ACC classic, yes, between Stanford and Syracuse. We're going to preview those weekday games here towards the back half of this episode. So that's your new Verballer Top 12 poll. Again, you can sign up to vote at verballers.com. Let's get to those leftovers. Let's do a little bit of a flashback. Leftover thoughts from week 3, Dan. What are some games? What are some takes that you conjured up as you were thinking back over the last 48 hours or so to week 3? What is popping up in your head?
I just took out the legal pad. I'm showing it to the camera that people watching on YouTube can see, or our live stream on Fox Sports 2. Thank you, Ty. Shh, don't tell them.
Don't tell them? Okay.
Don't tell
We've hacked the Matrix and we've broadcasted our pirate signal up there without anyone knowing.
How long would it take a Fox Sports executive to learn that we have been like paying somebody behind the scenes that controls the Fox Sports 2 feed? I guess it would be like people like upset that they're bull riding or F4 racing, something like that wasn't being shown. So we'd be found out. But
we could do that for 3 weeks before being found out.
If we stream this at 3 a.m.
3 weeks. I give it 3 weeks.
Fox Sports 2, 3 a.m. 1, it would be 3 weeks. You're absolutely right.
How do you even get Fox Sports 2? I don't even know how to watch it.
I have no clue. I think it's deep on cable packages, something if you have a sports package. How much could it cost us to pay Fox to air this show? Not even have them pay us. Like to buy airtime on Fox Sports 2 at 3 a.m.
Does anybody know
$75 a week?
Does anyone know anyone at Fox Sports 2?
We could technically launder a title for ourselves like TV stars. Ty Hildebrand and Dan Rubenstein. Fox Sports 2, 3 a.m. every Friday. Okay. On my legal pad.
What do you got
These
on the
are my
legal
notes.
pad? What do you got?
Okay. Is it time to readjust Arizona thoughts?
Oh.
After last week in the wide open Big 12. They have a bye before Utah and traveling to a resurgent BYU. Jake Retzlaff getting it done for the Cougars. South Alabama dropped 87 points this week.
We're going to talk about them, too, because we're going to preview that Thursday game against App State. But I believe this hits one of your fantasy things, does it not?
It's absolutely done. 80 burger. Absolutely,
You talked about the September 80 burger. Who is going to put up the September 80 burger, I believe, as a context for that. And South Alabama, they almost got to 90. They scored 87 points.
And that was their first win, I believe.
Yes, they were 1-2 now.
UNLV is currently ranked.
They are.
For the first time, I believe, ever in either poll. UNLV football. They have a bye before Fresno and the juggernaut. That is the Syracuse Orange.
The juggernaut. One thing that I found interesting, kind of on that point, if I could expand it a little bit, ESPN made some headlines because they updated their FPI, which I believe they update every week. But per the FPI, these are the teams that are most likely to make the playoff from the G5. All right, so they have a little column that says playoff percentage.
Yes.
The top 5 are Boise State 1, Memphis 2, UNLV 3, which is pretty high for UNLV given some preseason expectations.
Agree. I wasn't as high as I should have been, apparently.
And then NIU and Toledo. I did the MAC preview, and I was high on both those teams within the context of the MAC. In the context of the playoff, the MAC has acquitted itself pretty well playing out of conference against some of these power opponents. Obviously, NIU is the one that people
they have the signature G5 win thus far.
And it probably will be the remainder of the season.
Yeah.
But Toledo beat Mississippi State. I do want to talk about Mississippi State in a little bit. We'll get there. Beyond that, though, teams like USF and Tulane and Fresno and Coastal, even Army.
USF has that opportunity this week, right? They have Miami?
They have Miami this week.
Yeah.
Even Army. These are all teams that are ahead of 2 that we were pretty high on that we have not mentioned yet. Liberty and App State. Probably App State is lower. They're at currently 1%.
Nice comeback win against ECU. Fell down 16-0, I want to say, to start.
They won 21-19.
Yeah.
They're probably lower because they lost by 46 to Clemson. That's a bad loss. It wouldn't be a bad loss if it weren't by 46 to Clemson, but losing by 46 to a power conference team is definitely going to leave a dent. And Liberty, because Liberty doesn't play anyone. Liberty's right now at 3%, 3.1%.
Will they play
like
App State? Yes.
They do, and that was kind of where I was going with this. That game is in week 5. Week 4, this weekend, so not this weekend, but the weekend after in week 5, it's Liberty and App State in what I think amounts to a de facto play-in game, not to win anything, just to remain in this conversation.
Yeah.
Because whoever loses this game, I think, is out. That's how I would interpret these percentages for whatever they're worth. So if the G5 is your thing and that's something that you're curious about now in this playoff era, obviously they're all competing to try and get into this thing. That game in week 5 between App State and Liberty is definitely taking on the form of a game that's going to be very, very significant per that conversation. So just keep that in the backs of your minds.
2 things. Boise plays UNLV, I think, on a Friday night, the 25th. So that makes that Pitt-Syracuse game, by the way, that's a Thursday nighter. We get some spicy ACC action
I love it.
that night. So that'll be a fun weekend either way. Okay, next thing. Ole Miss immediately stomped Wake Forest. Did you see that Wake Forest then immediately canceled next year's return game?
Yeah, Breaky. Let's play that. I'm not going to yell. I need to conserve my voice here if I'm going to make it through this season. But
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I had somebody write to me and say, you need to play breaking news for that one. So this one's for you, old friend. Yeah,
I respect that. I respect that immensely.
They just bought him out.
Yeah. Leave no doubt as to where you stand about this matchup. Here's the thing with Ole Miss thus far, because we haven't had a lot of reason to talk about Ole Miss. They've taken care of business pretty emphatically. They didn't allow a touchdown to Wake Forest. So if going into the season, we said, yeah, I mean, look, they add Walter Nolan. He's the big headline name along the defensive line that they've added. But it's going to be the defense that is going to help to define what Ole Miss's ceiling is this year, especially after what they weren't able to do on defense in the SEC in their 2 losses. That becomes more interesting because their defense is good enough in this moment. I have written down here, Georgia Southern before Kentucky, at South Carolina, at LSU. So we really aren't going to know anything for at least a couple weeks about what Ole Miss truly can be. But not allowing a touchdown in 4 quarters to Wake Forest, not nothing, because that game was almost immediately in garbage time.
It's not nothing. And again, probably too early to start unpacking the stat profiles for any of these teams. You have to take them all with a grain of salt, although I will reference it in some of my leftover thoughts. Number 1 rushing defense. Number 1 success rate allowed.
Great.
Per defense, or per offense, or per opponent, I guess. Their defense is really good against the rush, is what I'm trying to say. Not quite as good against the pass. These are opponent adjusted. These are those numbers that remove garbage time stats, things of that nature. Defense is paced ahead right now of where they were a year ago, in I think a pretty significant way. So just something to keep an eye on with Ole Miss, because as you said, they did do a lot of work in the transfer portal to try and beef up that side of things.
I have this under maybe nothing, maybe something. Ollie Gordon and the Oklahoma State rushing attack has been very ordinary thus far against not great defenses.
Interesting.
We hold him to a higher standard. I don't know if he is nicked up. I don't know if the offensive line is beat up. Whatever it is, maybe nothing, maybe something.
That's interesting, especially when taken in concert with what I talked about in the preseason, which was Ollie Gordon's stats were through the roof, obviously.
Yeah.
But the line stats for Oklahoma State a year ago were not. And the implication there is that what Ollie Gordon did was by virtue of his own talent and not with the line giving him all that much support last season. Has something changed? As you said, not necessarily against great rushing defenses. We'll see as they get it more into the meat of their schedule. We're going to talk about a banger of a game this weekend that I think should give us a little bit more of a tell there, but definitely something to keep an eye on for sure.
Oklahoma State has the passing attack to jump out to leads, but to win a 4-quarter game, hopefully you can do more than just throw the ball. You have different speeds that you can play at.
Yeah.
And I think they certainly need that. The next thing is I watched every snap of Davis Warren in the Michigan offense against Arkansas State. I don't know if this season is done for in terms of Michigan, but man, right side of the offensive line, the center was blown off the ball a bunch. The positive thing is I really like Kalel Mullings. I mentioned that before. I like him even more after watching every snap. Davis Warren, I don't actually hate that much, but he just has those decisions where, like, we're not talking about tipped balls. We're not talking about a receiver running the wrong way. He just threw it to Arkansas State over and over.
3 picks.
I think
3 picks in that game.
3 picks in that game. Yeah. I think it was a couple in the first half and then one in the second. And Alex Orji came in, missed a wide open man deep. I wonder, and maybe you can't really do it on the fly, if you're talking about an offensive line that is a mixed bag at best. I think Michigan playing Harbaugh ball is kind of a huge mistake with the personnel on this team. And the receivers might be pretty good. It's just, I think it's the wrong system. Like, how would we know with these receivers? I think they should be, I don't know if cheesing is the right word, but leaning into, maybe it takes, you got to do it in the bye week, like play a little bit more creative pickleball, a little bit more RPO pickleball, still running slants stuff, but like, I don't know. I think Mullings and Donovan Edwards, rightfully so, are going to get a lot of attention from defenses. I would take this team, and this offense away from the lap of the offensive line. When they're running well, they're using a lot of like fullback and multiple tight ends and stuff like that. I don't know. I would say, like, how much money could Dan Mullen truly need to come in and be a consultant to turn this Michigan offense?
I think he'd do it for free, that guy.
He might. Just like on a Zoom call once a week. Yeah. Get with Dan Mullen or something, whoever's available. So that was my thought after watching that. I don't know if you had any additional Michigan-Arkansas State thoughts ahead of USC this weekend.
I have a Michigan State thought.
Please.
For what that's worth. We mentioned Michigan State as a surprise 3-0 team on the recap show.
Yeah.
And the opponents have been FAU. They were on the road at Maryland. They won that game by 3. Prairie View this past weekend, they shut out 40-0. Not the toughest slate. Okay. This week is the week where they start to get into more of the meat of that schedule. They've got Boston College. In their next 9 games, they're favored to lose 8 of them. This is where I think we start seeing what is going on here with this team and what as Jonathan Smith did. One thing I noticed, though, was on the defensive side of the ball, which was a problem last season. They were giving up close to 29 points a game, 28 points a game, somewhere in that neighborhood. Thus far, we're 3 weeks in, the competition hasn't been great. That number is all the way down to 11.3. So you might look at that and say, well, what's scoring defense? That's a number that can get skewed. That doesn't mean anything. And I'd say I agree with that completely. Yeah. That's why we don't use it generally. But then you look at the per play numbers, then you look at the opponent adjusted numbers, you chop out the garbage time stuff. Again, I will reiterate what I've been saying all season long. You got to give these numbers a little bit of a chance to cook before you can fully trust them.
Of course.
But it is still meaningful to look at them and see where any team is ranking relative to where they were a year ago. They are much, much better defensively with their defensive success rates. Their efficiency is much higher, much better against the pass. There's been a really big jump specifically in havoc rate, specifically in converting pressures into sacks. So we talked about how this was a veteran unit coming in. They just needed better organization. They needed better numbers, frankly. I believe we're seeing some indication that things are going in a good direction. These numbers are probably going to regress as they get into the heart of their schedule.
They have FAU 4 more times this season.
They have them 4 more times. This is probably going to be the high watermark for the defense. I don't want to be misquoted here, but
okay. I
think it is a positive early indicator that Jonathan Smith has them better organized, that Joe Rossi, their new DC they brought over from Minnesota, that they are finding a way to tap into that veteran leadership and just get a lot more out of them. It feels like maybe the plan is working to some degree.
Yeah. And look, Joe Rossi speaks Big Ten.
He does. So that's one thing that I took away from last week that I didn't really have much of a chance to unpack. The other thing is UCF, excuse me.
Okay.
We can maybe talk about USF on the week 4 recap. I won't go there yet. But UCF is 3-0. They edged out TCU on the road.
Yeah, big
really
comeback.
Good game. That was a good game. Per ESPN's updated FPI, UCF has now the best odds of winning the Big 12.
I came into this season pretty high on the Knights. Ted Roofman was standing.
We both did.
Made nice adjustments in the second half. I don't know how many points they allowed in the second half against TCU. They fell down pretty big, but came back very nicely.
30% is the likelihood that ESPN gives UCF of winning the Big 12. And that puts them ahead of K-State, which is at 25%. Oklahoma State about 14%, and Utah, which is currently at 10. So meaningful, right?
Yeah.
Meaningful. Per one set of numbers that I found, they're projected to lose to Iowa State and Utah and finish 10-2. But here's the thing about that. Of their remaining 9 games, 7 of them project as one-score contests. So it's early. SP plus numbers, I checked those, seem significantly better on both offense and defense for the Knights. As compared to last season, this is. Schedule looks workable. We've been saying it for a while now. It's workable. They've got Florida in a couple weeks.
They do.
Probably an open question as to whether that's a Billy Napier Florida at this point, given the way things have gone. Just keep your eye on UCF because those numbers are high. And they are dynamic and relative to what's going on elsewhere in the conference. And defense needs to hold up.
Here are the quarterbacks, by the way, that UCF has remaining for its defense to contend with. Shedeur Sanders, some combination of Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway, your guy, Brendan Sorsby, your guy, the Boar, the best of all Roccos. Is that what you're calling him?
That's correct, yep.
Rocco Becht. A resurgent, once again, Jake Retzlaff, BYU.
Your boy.
Noah Fafita. Sam Levitt, who had a nice day with Texas State, whatever. Garrett Green, hopefully Cam Rising.
Yeah.
That's a good solid roster quarterbacks that this defense has to contend with.
That's a good crop. So, and this is, I think, only going to further the point of, you can say what you want about projections.
Yeah.
But whether or not UCF wins those games or loses those games, what the numbers are saying is that they're going to be tight with all of their opponents.
Nice and snug
from here on out. And that makes them a really good TV show for those who
I agree. Well, and especially now that we have the knowledge that they'll come back from 21-point deficit or whatever.
Yeah.
They absolutely will. Okay, next I have, well, this we'll get into in a moment, but like Illinois and Nebraska are both ranked and playing Friday night. Illinois was a little bit too sloppy in that first half to make me feel incredible about Illinois, ranked team. But the duo of like they're winning in a way that is strange for a Brett Bielema team to me. I mean, they threw the ball a lot when Bielema was at Arkansas, but offensive line has not been good this year. The running game has not been good this year. Luke Altmaier has been above average. The duo of Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin has been very good. I just don't know how long they're going to be ranked without an offensive line.
Yeah.
But good story thus far. Held Kansas under 20, I believe. 3 picks.
Yep.
NC State has some issues, man.
I'm worried about them. I kind of don't understand it either.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're just sort of average.
Mm-hmm.
It's another if it feels like week in and week out you're on the fringes of losing to bad teams you should not be worse than.
Western Carolina, and this one was Louisiana Tech. Yeah.
Like I'm not that down on La Tech. I kind of like the general like vibe of the program. I think that maybe headed in a good direction, but they've got some work to do there. If NC State's nearly half as good as we expected, that shouldn't be something we're even talking about on this show.
Yeah, a standard issue NC State should have at least hung around for a chunk of the Tennessee game or scored a chunk during the like there should have been something to indicate NC State is competitive. There have been offensive line issues, especially in the run game. Grayson McCall left the game against Louisiana Tech injured. I think it was like a little bit before halftime, I want to say. He even healthy, it doesn't seem immediately like a great fit for this offense. Like he's not great throwing a deeper ball. And so I don't know where that leaves us with the Wolfpack. CJ Bailey was who came in. True freshman, was Jeremiah Smith's quarterback in high school. Big kid. Confirmed that he is 6'6" Ty. He's not a 5'10" that I'm claiming is 6'6".
Yeah.
He is a confirmed, he's on the thinner side. He's like 6'6", $180. But looks like he could have a higher ceiling, and you don't want to put too much on a true freshman. But I don't know. They've struggled running the ball, and that potentially opens up if they're able, because they have good receivers that maybe they just need that shot in the arm of somebody new under center and sort of take the lumps that come with it. But yeah, it's been a struggle this year in ways that I don't think I saw coming.
Well, I don't think even people who cover NC State saw it coming. I've been reading Corey Smith that we had on the show this summer, and there's definitely a fair amount of confusion as to how it got here. And to your point on Grayson McCall, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Nice little Stockton Malone situation here, because I've got a kind of a spin off of that I want to talk about. Take it, Carl. But it's striking to me that there isn't a whole lot of positive talk out there about Grayson McCall thus far.
No. It's been and hopefully it's explained away by something else, because I think he's a talented guy, but it has not been pretty throwing the ball, longer than like 8 yards. I have Arkansas is about to be such a good TV show. Whatever happens. Well,
hold that thought. Let's hold that thought. Let's hold that thought. I have one more thing here. I don't know how many leftover thoughts you have.
I've got 38 more. Continue.
I have one big one left that I wanted to lead to something of a discussion between you and I, because we brought this up just privately when we were chatting through things, I think, on Saturday as we were getting ready for the recap show.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at 24/7's list of the top transfer quarterbacks from this previous portal cycle.
Okay.
These lists don't mean anything. They don't. They're like rankings in week 3. Okay. It's going to change a million times over, but it was something to go by. This was the ranking of the top transfer quarterbacks. I looked at it and then I filtered it out based on guys who are actually starting for their teams. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting discussion to try and figure out truly who is the best transfer quarterback through 3 weeks of the season. Because right now, if you take the top 16 quarterbacks that are actually starting for their respective schools, here's what it looks like if you filter that list down. Aiden Childs.
Okay.
Hit or miss so far. Cam Ward's been good. Brock Vandegrift.
Cam Ward's been excellent.
Cam Ward's been great. He's probably the answer. But Brock Vandegrift, Malik Murphy. We saw Malik Murphy throw against Northwestern. That I thought left a little bit to be desired. But
upside, but not consistent yet.
Will Howard, maybe the product of his environment, but serviceable, right? Has been fine.
I would say more than serviceable.
He's been good.
Right?
I was real high.
He is excellent at Ohio State. The early returns indicate it. Yeah.
I was very high on Will Howard coming into the season. Riley Leonard's a big old right now.
I'm going to extend grace just because of injury stuff, but continue.
Injury stuff, good at running the football, definitely has his legs back under him.
Yeah.
But throwing the ball, that's been kind of a nightmare.
Tricky.
DeQuan Finn at Baylor.
Beat up.
Didn't play last week.
No.
Dylan Gabriel, who was shaky, I think, before this past week.
Yeah.
DJU, not even going to have that discussion. Your guy, Kyle McCord.
Oh, my God. Monster.
Who also has a claim as the answer to this question.
Mm-hmm.
Will Rogers has been fine for Washington. TVD is hurt, probably done for the year. Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati, I think, has been something of a revelation at the quarterback position. He's been good. Max Brosmer, we'll wait and see at Minnesota.
Yeah.
Grayson McCall, we just talked about Grayson McCall. And then Curtis Rourke, who's been incredible.
Excellent.
For Indiana. But that's your top 16.
Yeah.
And so it's striking to me that of those guys, I can boldface 7 of them and say, yeah, these guys have been pretty good.
Yeah.
But no more than that.
Yeah, there's very little to go on, right? Like, what's more impressive, Dylan Gabriel against Oregon State or Cam Ward against Florida? And I guess that's much more of a knock on where Florida is right now as an opponent, that they're Oregon State-ish with how Oregon State has been depleted. Will Howard hasn't played anybody. That's the case against him. Tyler Shuck hasn't played anybody. That's the case against him.
Well, I didn't even bring up Tyler Shuck.
You didn't even bring up Shuck.
I didn't even bring up Shuck. And that's sort of the point, right? This is just a larger conversation about, do lists mean anything? Do rankings mean anything? Because guys that are not part of that top list, Jordan McLeod at Texas State has been really good. KJ Jefferson at UCF. We just talked about UCF.
I think he's in that conversation for sure.
He should be. Our guy Matt Sluka at UNLV has been very, very good, if not excellent at running the football.
Yeah.
Diego Pavia, something of a revelation at Vandy.
Big win. Lost to Georgia State this past week.
Georgia State. Eli Holstein at Pitt. Hello. He's easily in the top 5 of this.
I agree.
Tyler Shuck, not in that top grouping. Taylon Green, not in that top grouping. These are all guys.
Struggled some against UAB.
Struggled some against UAB. They won. And
yes,
I think he's raw still, but obviously very talented. My bigger point here is transfer quarterbacks are a coin flip as to whether or not they're going to work. transfer quarterbacks are really difficult to rank. You can rank them in theory, but when you put them in their system, you either have a Grayson McCall, which maybe it doesn't work, or you have a Curtis Rourke where it's working famously.
Right.
Take these lists with a grain of salt. Use them as a reference, but do not treat them as gospel, because for sure, there are a lot of guys that are lower on this list who are, I think, outpacing some of the names, some of the bigger names that were much higher at the start of the season.
Yeah, next 2 or 3 weeks, a lot of these teams have big games. I don't think Oregon does. Oregon's on bye, but Cam Ward, I believe, has Virginia Tech. He has USF this week and then Virginia Tech, I believe. I don't have their schedule in front of me. UCF schedule we just went over. Pitt's schedule, I assume, is going to continue to have challenges on it because the ACC seems wide open. Again, I don't have it in front of me. Yeah, this is going to be great. And the interesting thing about this conversation, too, is with somebody like Eli Holstein and I'm not being goofy here, with Kyle McCord, is they come in with either a new coordinator or a whole new head coach or whatever, and their presence has been the catalyst and, the engine for change, right? We haven't seen a Pitt offense in a couple of years. And then Eli Holstein and Cade Bell, I want to say, come in, and Eli Holstein is like the embodiment of the new Pitt offense, and Kyle McCord is the embodiment of a much more productive Syracuse offense thus far. So, that might be a little bit more meaningful, whereas like if Dylan Gabriel is vaguely Bo Nix, that's a success story, but it's nothing new for Oregon. So we'll see. Can't wait.
It is a broader point that we have made the last couple of years now, especially as the transfer portal has become more of a presence in college football, that you cannot assume a big quarterback name is going to equal big quarterback output. A lot of these guys I listed, even if they're not necessarily in the top grouping of what we have seen so far among transfers, they haven't all been disasters. That's not the implication, right? They've been fine in many cases. But again, you cannot assume as fact that somebody stepping into a new position, whether it's because of the system around him or the talent around him, you just cannot assume that they're going to hit right away. Yeah. It looks like a coin flip. That's what we've been saying. That's what this amounts to here through 3 weeks of the year.
Right.
That's where I'm at.
Okay. Next, I mentioned the Arkansas thing. Virginia Tech, a nice, comfortable win against ODU. They have Rutgers and at Miami, so there's a revenge factor against Rutgers from last year.
Oh, I love
By
Rutgers.
the way,
I love
another
Rutgers
quarterback.
I love Rutgers.
And this is what I'm sticking with. Another quarterback we haven't mentioned is Athan. Kaliak Manis, Rutgers.
Yeah.
Been solid.
Okay.
Vandy couldn't hold on against Georgia State. They had to come back. They scored late. Georgia State came back with a 75-yard drive with a touchdown, 15 seconds left in the game. Vandy needed that to get to a bowl.
Yeah.
Hank Brown at Auburn.
Yeah.
Was good. It was New Mexico. Auburn doesn't always succeed against teams from New Mexico. Hank Brown, welcome to college football. Sawyer Robertson was good, right?
Yeah.
For Baylor against Air Force, Bryson Washington. Looks like he could be quite fun for Baylor. I mentioned Retzlaff twice now. It was Wyoming, but he looked very good. My final item, Cal ran the hell out of the ball against San Diego State. Doesn't have a great defense this year. No Jaden Ott, beat up. Javian Thomas, Kadarius Callaway. Dude performances for Cal.
And Cal's got Florida State this week.
Yeah, that was the late game. That game was happening as we were recording. Cal has Florida State. They make up one of the 8 teams that look very difficult all of a sudden for Florida State.
Yeah. All right.
That's my legal pad.
One of the things that we did this offseason when we were updating our Patreon tiers out at verballers.com, we wanted to give that community an opportunity to have more input into what we do on this episode. As it's a look back, as it's one of these things each week where we have a chance to take a step back and look around college football to see what's going on. So we decided we're going to take a suggested topic each week and turn it into a game. Would you like to play a game of over-under, Dan?
I would love to.
Let's play over or under.
That's our girl Nancy, back from her vacation.
Great.
Introing this segment. This one comes to us from Verballer Kevin.
Okay.
Or Kyle, excuse me.
They're all the same.
Kyle says
all these names.
Kyle says the SEC needs a deeper dive because it seems like there have been a lot of underwhelming showings this year.
Yeah.
Our game of over-under is not what you think. Our game is SEC overwhelmed or SEC underwhelmed. I've got 7 teams here.
Ooh.
I want to talk through these quickly. We do not need to spend 10 minutes per team. But these are teams that have been obviously on the radar. They're in the SEC. And in some cases, we haven't talked a whole lot about them. So it's very simple, Dan. I will throw out a team name. You will tell me overwhelmed, underwhelmed based on what you've seen so far.
Okay. I'm ready.
Easy one to start. Tennessee Volunteers.
So have they been overwhelmed?
Have you been overwhelmed or have you been underwhelmed by what you've seen out of
me
Tennessee?
personally. Oh, overwhelmed. Absolutely.
I think that's easy. Right?
Very little to complain about, if anything.
I think we start with an easy one there.
Oklahoma this week?
Oklahoma is my next team on the list.
Okay. But they play this week, yes?
They play this week.
Okay.
I've been underwhelmed by Oklahoma so far.
Same.
I've been underwhelmed, and I think the text messages that we received from the Oklahoma Verballerhood sort of confirmed that. And I read one of those off on one of our episodes last week. It's striking to me that you get different answers from Oklahoma fans as to why the vibes aren't as strong as they'd hope.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, it's the quarterback. In other cases, it's the running game, which has not been good. In some cases,
offensive coordinator. Yeah,
it's a coordinator, the play calling with Seth Luttrell. The fact that it's been all over the map like that, I do not take as a good sign. Now, they're home this week against Tennessee. Maybe this is their opportunity to kind of get back on the straight and narrow. But it sounds like from among the Oklahoma people that listen to us, the fact that they're underwhelmed is meaningful because I feel it too, and they're watching the team a lot more closely than I am. So I think we're in agreement.
We're in agreement with being underwhelmed, and I think you're right that it speaks to the state of Oklahoma that the diehards, the people that watch every single snap and read everything that everybody says, whatever, that nobody can come to like a consensus top 3 things that are wrong with Oklahoma. That like you would take it pretty harshly and personally if I said, Ty, these are the 5 least favorite parts of your face. And you're like, I'm sorry, you're counting 5 parts of my face that you take issue with?
Right.
That'd be tough. So that's where we are.
Mississippi State.
They get a little bit of a pass, but obviously underwhelmed after the Toledo loss.
It wasn't just a loss.
It was a comfortable drubbing.
They got beat down. Their performance versus their SP plus projection was -32.
Yeah.
-32. They were 20 points worse on defense and 12 points worse on offense. Right. So the fact that they bottomed out in the way that they did against Toledo, which is not a great offensive team, that's very underwhelming. And this is a rebuilding situation. They're not going to be good this year. They're never going to be good this year. But that one left a mark for me, if I'm being real. I got to say underwhelmed, just solely based on that game.
This is the Nick Saban, Louisiana Monroe moment for Jeff Levy and Mississippi State.
I don't know,
yeah, Mississippi State underwhelming so far, but obviously given the last 18 months or so for Mississippi State, willing to extend some grace, but Toledo shouldn't be included in that grace blanket probably in this moment. But yeah, it's been a full roster turnover. Continue.
Texas A&M, Dan.
Texas A&M, I've been pleasantly, slightly overwhelmed by.
Why?
To open your season against a Notre Dame team and show a good amount of fight, especially on defense. I'm not going to say that I'm fully overwhelmed by them even after the Florida game, just because I think quarterback questions kind of persist, like where they're going to be long-term in terms of Connor Wegman's health. And, the upside of Marcel Reed is obvious, but I don't know. We're 2-3 games into the Mike Elko era. I would say it's not a full gust of overwhelming, but it's a gentle overwhelming breeze, Ty.
I was impressed by what they did on the road against Florida this past week. And
sure.
That's not to say that Florida's any kind of great team. We were both on Florida, though. They were at home. They were a 4-point dog.
I let my DJ Lagway emotions get the best of me, and that happens.
I tried to filter those out, and I still liked Florida's chances in that game.
Okay.
But A&M just sort of blew them out. It really wasn't a close game.
Yeah. Feisty defense. I like them.
I think I'm slightly overwhelmed as well.
Yeah.
I think I'm in agreement with you. Where do you stand on Auburn?
I am underwhelmed by Auburn in this moment.
Are you underwhelmed by Auburn, the version that had Peyton Thorne, and you feel better now about Hank Brown?
No, because it's New Mexico. I don't care. T-Mac had 718 yards against New Mexico in week 1. I don't know what we consider, all due respect to Bronco Mendenhall and the Lobos. I just don't know what we can consider a performance against New Mexico to be, because they played a Cal team that I think has some fight in them, but I don't think they're going to win 9 or 10 games. I think they're still going to be a bowl-ish team, Cal. And if they're going with Hank Brown the rest of the way, okay, I'm intrigued. I'm definitely intrigued by a Hank Brown Auburn team in ways that I wasn't with Peyton Thorne. But Peyton Thorne has also like laid the lumber against terrible teams. So I don't know. I'm still a little bit underwhelmed, because that Cal game at home was an opportunity to say, here is the 2.0 version of Hugh Freeze's Auburn. And, it's Hugh Freeze. I saw some stories. I think it was sort of taken out of context a little bit, like throwing players under the bus and said the coaches called a near perfect game against Cal. I don't think the full context was there, but I don't know. At home against that team, like, that was a nice opportunity to show the progress that we had been hoping to see from Auburn.
What strikes me about Auburn, stop me when you get to a game here on the schedule.
I'm ready.
That feels like a gimme win. Okay. A team that you look at and you say, yeah, Auburn's definitely better than that team.
Yep.
This week, Arkansas. I don't think you can say that about Arkansas.
You said it's Arkansas at home?
Arkansas at home.
Okay.
Next week, Oklahoma at home. Definitely not a gimme.
Not a gimme.
Week 6 on the road at Georgia. Definitely not.
Not a gimme.
They're on bye. Week 7, maybe that's the answer. But week 8 on the road at Mizzou. Definitely not.
Not a gimme.
Week 9 on the road at Kentucky. Kentucky didn't look great, but I still don't think that's a gimme.
Right.
And then week 10, the answer is Vanderbilt.
I don't think it's a gimme.
And then maybe it's after their
second bye. What has Hugh Freeze done against Diego Pavia other than lose?
Maybe then it's week 12 after another bye against Louisiana Monroe.
Here's the thing with Auburn. It's not a question of gimme or not a gimme. It's sort of a squint question. Can you squint and see wins against ...
I could
because
see
that's
wins,
what you're doing right now with Auburn's offense.
I could see wins against Arkansas. That's doable.
Yeah.
I don't think they're beating Oklahoma. They're not beating Georgia. I don't think they're beating Mizzou. I could squint and see a win against Kentucky if we get the version of Kentucky we saw last week.
Sure.
And certainly against Vanderbilt. But either way, they've already got a loss on the schedule. And if you count Oklahoma, Georgia, and Mizzou, that's 3 more. They've also got a game late against Alabama. That is a rivalry, but I think Bama looks head and shoulders above Alabama.
I mean, they were a freak play from winning that game last year, but yeah.
Last year, they were. But I think Bama looks head and shoulders above Auburn at this point. And that game is at Bryant-Denny this year. They also have A&M later in the year. I don't know what version of A&M we're going to get. So this looks like a 5-loss team to me.
Yeah. And look, teams are going to stack the box against Jarquez Hunter, and they're going to force whoever's at quarterback to beat them. And so now you're saying, okay, what is the evolution? What is the development of, again, Peyton Thorne or Hank Brown look like against these teams who are now going to start looking at Auburn and saying, like, oh, man, our schedule's really tough, but, like, we've circled the Auburn game as an opportunity because we know that their offense is kind of shaky at times. So they're going to be getting a lot of best shots, too.
Last 2 teams are Arkansas and Mizzou. Underwhelmed, overwhelmed.
I'm just whelmed by Arkansas in this moment, if that's okay.
Okay.
I don't know. The way that they fell down to UAB, obviously in a letdown situation after Oklahoma State, I believe, for the week before in that overtime loss. I still need to see, like, I'm very much overwhelmed by Arkansas on the ground. I'm very much overwhelmed by Arkansas on defense at times, like, looking improved. I don't know. The passing game to me is still a pretty big element of all of this with Arkansas feelings, and I'm not there yet. I like, Andrew Armstrong's a solid receiver. I don't think he's a star, an SEC star receiver, but I'm still a little bit whelmed after that UAB game.
I think I'm overwhelmed by Arkansas.
Okay.
And you could probably pick that up from the timbre in my voice whenever I talk about the Razorbacks this year. Maybe I'm too focused on Taylor Green. I just think he's crazy talented, and he's not a finished product. There is definitely a rawness to his game at this point that if you're an Arkansas fan, your heart's in your throat more often than not, knowing this guy's got a big mistake in him or an incredible play in him. It's kind of one or the other. Their post-game win expectancy in that Oklahoma State game, the one that they lost in overtime.
Yeah, they gave it away, but
86%.
Yeah.
86%. So they played well enough to beat that.
So doesn't that whelm you a little?
Whelm? I'm saying I'm overwhelmed.
No, I know. I'm saying whelm is like bring them back to like average whelming, not over or under.
Between what the defense looked like against UAB and how they lost that Oklahoma State game, it definitely brings them back down to earth. But the general sentiment here is I feel better about them than it did in the preseason.
At Auburn, A&M at Jerry World, I believe, and Tennessee at home are the next three.
It's not just those games. They've got LSU. They've got Ole Miss.
Oh, I'm just saying short term. Yeah,
they got Texas. They got Mizzou still on the schedule. It's a brutal schedule.
Yeah.
Absolutely brutal.
Feels like you need a passing game.
Feels like you need a passing game.
Yeah.
So far I've been good with Arkansas. And then the last one's Mizzou.
I'm going to say overwhelmed, slightly overwhelmed. They took care of business against nobody in particular those first couple weeks. They won a clunker against BC. I'm willing to extend a certain amount of grace to Mizzou, given the step forward they took last year. I don't know. They adjusted really well defensively to Castellanos and BC, so that's something. I don't know. It didn't feel like these two teams were competitive in the second half of a game, which seems important. So, yeah, I'm slightly overwhelmed by Mizzou. I think it's Corey Batoon is the new from South Alabama defensive coordinator for Mizzou. Thought he did a really nice job adjusting. I would be more whelmed. I would have more overwhelming whelming. I don't know. I want to see more fun Luther Burden down the field. Like I want to see kind of a video game element to Mizzou that we haven't really seen thus far.
Of their remaining games, the remaining 9 games, there's only one projected loss here. That's on the road to Alabama.
It's such a great schedule.
But it is a really good schedule. For an SEC team, this is a very favorable schedule. So
who do they miss?
Well, I mentioned they play Bama, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have to play Georgia. They don't have to play Tennessee.
Where's the Bama game?
Bama game is in Bryant-Denny, so that's tough.
Oh, okay.
They do not have to play teams like LSU.
Texas is not on this schedule.
Texas not on the schedule. It's seemingly the best teams in the SEC are not on the schedule.
Yeah.
With the exception
of
Alabama.
Miss, right?
No Ole Miss.
No Ole Miss, no Georgia, no Texas.
No.
That's great.
I think I am about where I expected with Mizzou.
Okay.
Whelmed is where I'm at. But game against Vandy this week before a bye, and then on the road at A&M, Kyle Field. That'll be an interesting matchup. We'll see.
You know who they do have? They do have the creator on the road, right?
Lenoris, yeah.
They do have Lenoris Sellers in. It's not in Mizzou. It's not in Columbia.
Right.
Well, I guess it's Columbia. It's in Columbia. It's just the other Columbia.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. All the way out into middle of November, week 12. We'll see.
It's a great schedule. It's such a good schedule.
Write in solidverbal@gmail.com or hit us up on social media. Leave a comment. If you can leave a comment somewhere on this podcast, let us know where you agree, disagree, or indifferent. But thanks to Kyle for sending in that SEC question. He says a lot of underwhelming showings this year. We'll see how right we are about some of these teams as we get a little bit deeper into this campaign, Dan.
Great. Where are we going next?
Last but certainly not least, let's do a little bit of a look ahead. There are 3 games of note on Thursday and Friday that we need to discuss here. We have been doing these previews a few days early because, as I said an episode or 2 ago, typically when we would do the previews for these games as part of the Wednesday or Thursday preview episode, we'd have to stack it all the way at the back end of the show because we didn't want the first thing you heard to go stale within 24 hours. So now it took us 17 years, whatever the hell it's been of doing this show, to figure out, maybe we should just talk about these games earlier.
Yeah.
So we're talking about them earlier. We'll do it on Tuesday this year. This is kind of like our early bird special. Friday, 8 p.m. on Fox. It is a ranked contest between number 24 Illinois And now number 22, Nebraska. The vibes are strong at Nebraska, Dan, right now. They are very strong. They are a 9-point favorite in this one. I take what you said about Illinois, and I commit that to memory.
Mm-hmm.
I look at this game, though, and I say, oh, man, this is going to be a rock fight. This looks like a rock fight to me, where Dylan Raiola looks a little bit more mortal. The Illinois pass defense is significantly better this year than they were last year, and I think better than anything Raiola has seen so far. So even if he doesn't go out there and look like he's out of his depth, I still expect less emphasis on the pass and more on the run, because that's where Illinois is gettable. You want to run against Illinois if you can.
Yep.
That was the concern coming into the year. The stats, for whatever they're worth at this point through 3 weeks of the year, also support that that's a bit of an issue.
Yep.
I'm saying rock fight. I think we're talking about field position and time of possession and turnovers and all the big stuff in the upper Midwest that makes the Big Ten. The Big Ten, 20-13 Nebraska. I'm going points here, taking Illinois plus the points, but Illinois to ultimately succumb to Nebraska on the road.
How's the weather going to be in Lincoln, Nebraska?
I didn't check the weather.
Hot, Ty. It's Friday night?
Friday night, 8 p.m. on Fox.
I'm seeing a high of 90 degrees in Lincoln, Nebraska. I don't know if that changes anything for you. I was searching for reasons to take those points, and I think you're not wrong when you talk about it being a struggle at times in field position and, lunging for a first down marker on 3rd and 3 or something like that, every yard's going to be difficult. I think Illinois might be one of our first LRO teams of the season. That first half against Central Michigan, I like the win against Kansas. I do. Kansas just also lost to UNLV. Did they not?
They did.
Am I correct in that result? So we kind of have to downgrade the importance of Illinois' win in that moment. I am a believer in Luke Altmaier's development and those receivers. There was a great clip of, I think it was Pat Bryant, blocking his ass off against CMU on a long run. I love seeing stuff like that. That's what makes me upgrade a team. But I think this is just a bad matchup. We saw what Nebraska's defensive line was able to do against Colorado's offensive line and really put Shedeur Sanders in a bind. So Nebraska's at home. They haven't played a road game, I don't believe, yet. So there is a certain amount of comfort that Nebraska's feeling right now. It's been an easy path thus far. Illinois will be more difficult, but ultimately I'm going to say something like 27-17 and Nebraska covers.
Barely covers, yeah. It'll be right around that number.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. I've got it at 7. You've got it at 10.
Yeah.
Also on Friday night, let's talk about the Franimal coming out of hibernation with the bye week. 7:30 on ESPN, Stanford versus Syracuse, a classic ACC rivalry, Dan.
Classic.
Stanford now begins a run of Syracuse, Clemson, Virginia Tech, and Notre Dame on 4 straight weeks. Does not feel good for the Cardinal.
No.
I looked at this game. I did a brief look at the numbers and the stat profiles for both these teams, and I just feel like Syracuse is way better. They're at home. It's a Friday night. Good bit of travel for a Stanford team that I'm not crazy high on. They're still rebuilding.
Right.
This is a game I think that Syracuse should cover, no?
I think so. I mean, Syracuse hasn't been fully tested yet, as much as we like to have fun with it, and I don't think Stanford is going to offer that, but just in terms of what we believe Syracuse to be or not be. But I don't know. The Stanford defense, I still think, has a ways to go. There's interesting players on this Stanford offense, though. I don't know. I still think they're behind. I'm going to go, again, the number is
9.5.
I think I'm going to take Cuse here.
Kind of feel like we have to.
I'm going to take Cuse, and I feel good about it. And again, this is what my grandfather told me, his father told me, the father before that. It's not truly the fall. It's not truly college football season until we see that Stanford-Syracuse ACC matchup.
I know. I know.
Here we are.
It will be written into the record books forevermore.
Yeah.
The classic ACC matchup between these two schools.
Mm-hmm.
And last but certainly not least, G5 game. Talked about South Alabama putting up 87 points last week.
Yep.
This one's on Thursday on ESPN. South Alabama going on the road to Boone, square off against App State. App State's about an 8-point favorite.
Short week after an emotional comeback win.
Yes. There should be points in this game.
Yes.
There should be points in this game because I don't know if I really trust either defense. So I think it's very beneficial looking at this one for App State and Joey Aguiar. I think they're going to put up a ton of yardage through the air. But I also don't know if they can contain South Alabama because I don't know if I trust their defense either. So I'm long way of saying give me App State minus the number. It's 42-28, a bunch of points somewhere in that range. A fun Thursday night game if you're in the market for one.
Yeah, and it's, a South Alabama Jaguar team that had to sort of start very late. It's Major Applewhite, right?
Correct.
At South Alabama, and so they lose, Kane Womack to Alabama a little bit late in the process. So, I still think there's an adjustment period with South Alabama. I think I'm going to give those points as well. The short week road thing, it's kind of nice to pick against that team. If we believe in App State as a quality team, I'm going to give the points.
So the schedule for the week ahead, just in terms of the solid verbal,
it's a fun one. This for us and for week 4 in general.
Yeah, what it looks like for us is we drop the recap episodes at midnight on Saturdays, but before we get to that point, we got the preview episode that drops to the feed on Thursday. We've got Big Ten Breakfast, which has been going really well and is a ton of fun. That drops to our YouTube channel on Friday. 9 a.m. is when you can watch that. But bigger picture, just in terms of the verballerhood, Dan, week 4, definitely better than week 3. And there are a handful of matchups that I think we bubble to the surface here and look at and say, yeah, these are games that are going to tell us a lot about the teams involved. We've got NC State at Clemson. Clemson's a heavy favorite in that game by 17.
Oof. Yeah.
But we will definitely know a lot more about NC State on the backside of this one. You mentioned USC at Michigan before. USC right now, time of recording, we're doing this recording Monday afternoon. 5.5-point road favorite in the Big House. 4 p.m. on Fox, a Big 12 showdown between Utah and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State favored by 2.5 points. Is Cam Rising back for that one? Is that the assumption?
I hope so. What did you say that number is?
2.5
Utah game?
2.5 in favor of Oklahoma State, and they're at home.
Which, by the way, the USC game up to a 6.5.
6.5
points
now
at some books in this moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got the Utah-Oklahoma State game, which is going to be very significant for the Big 12 season. And then Tennessee at Oklahoma. Tennessee's
you
favored
have this
by
down
7.
Oklahoma -7 on the document, which gave me a second.
I think I meant to put +7. It's
okay.
Tennessee -7, Oklahoma +7 at home.
Okay.
7:30 on ABC.
Oklahoma has a moment to show that it can grow.
Yep.
Tennessee has a moment because they've already proven it against NC State. So, I don't know. I hope it's not ugly. That's all I am pointing to. I hope Oklahoma is able to, maybe it was a look-ahead spot against Tulane, but I kind of doubt it.
Yeah.
So I hope for Oklahoma that we get something new from this offense.
And very quickly, just some other matchups that I think are interesting and meaningful. Florida is only a 4.5-point road favorite against Mississippi State, which says a lot about where the bookmakers have Florida right now.
Mm-hmm.
That number should be bigger given the state of Mississippi State. The fact that it isn't is, I think, pretty damning for Billy Napier.
I agree.
They lose this game, they go into a bye week after this. If they lose this game, it's over.
I think so.
It may already be over.
I mean, given the context of Mississippi State losing to Toledo, you can't lose to the team that lost to the team, right? In that case, Toledo. I think vibes are down bad.
Vibes are really bad. And like I said, it may already be over for Napier.
Right.
But certainly, if they don't win that game, that would be very problematic.
We should, after this show, record a Billy Napier has been let go, just so we can get the algorithm like that, Ty.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He's probably the first one to go.
Not an if.
This season. Yeah. We also have Auburn at Arkansas. We mentioned that one before. That'll be interesting. Yeah. 3:30 on the ACC network. Rutgers right now getting 4.5 on the road at Virginia Tech. That might be my lock of the year right now.
Wow.
I don't think Virginia Tech's that good. I was real high on Virginia Tech, mostly as a byproduct of Kyron Drones in the schedule, and so far I think they have underwhelmed.
But doesn't Virginia Tech potentially fall into they're not who they are on their worst day, they're not who they are on their best day?
I don't know, man. I just haven't been overwhelmed by any of their first couple showings so far. I don't know if they're that good.
Okay.
So I'm already in at Rutgers plus 5.5. That number's already come down. Wouldn't surprise me if it continued going down. What else do we got here? We got Miami, Ohio at Notre Dame, another MAC game. Oh God, we'll see what happens there.
Look, Notre Dame has been nothing if not competitive against the MAC this season.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech at Louisville should be fun. Should tell us a lot about Louisville. I desperately wanted to talk more about Louisville as part of this episode. I did not feel we had much to go on. They've only played 2 games.
Yeah.
So Georgia Tech can score. We'll see what the defense looks like for Louisville at home. We'll see what Tyler Shuck looks like against Georgia Tech. That'll be a meaningful game, I think, just to help us suss out where the ACC's at. The Skillet game, TCU minus 2.5 at SMU. I think I'm really heavy on TCU there.
Okay. Coming off of a kind of an ugly GAC against UCF, but Kevin Jennings, new quarterback, full-time starter at SMU, rivalry game on the CW. Is that Tom Brenneman calling that one?
I believe so. 5 p.m. And then just to round things out very quickly, some other games just to be mindful of. We'll preview a bunch of these on the Thursday show.
I'm ready.
Iowa at Minnesota's the 7:30 NBC game on Saturday night.
Great.
Miami at USF at 7 p.m.
Spicy.
Spicy. We called this game out many moons ago.
Yep.
Michigan State at Boston College. I put it on here just because I talked a lot about Michigan State. And Boston College is interesting.
Yeah.
Michigan State at Boston College. Baylor at Colorado. I think that's only about a 1-point spread, something like that, in favor of Colorado.
I think it's another Sawyer Robertson game, I believe, for Baylor. Okay.
And Cal at Florida State. Florida State favored by 1.5 points.
Woo!
At home. At home.
I mean, Cal's already gone to Auburn.
Yeah.
And won it. Like, it would... So Florida State's favored, you said?
1.5 points is the line right now.
Oh, man. Well, here's what you do need to know. For whatever it means, last year, I believe DJU absolutely lit up Cal.
Correct.
At Oregon State. At Oregon State, different coach, different team, different everything. So, I don't know. Maybe there's something there. But if you're talking about a quarterback who has struggled for a team whose vibes are down, one of the last people I'd like game planning against my team is Justin Wilcox, who just throws ghosts into defense at his best. Throws a lot of ghosts into those passing lanes.
The other game here that I'll call out, and then we'll call it a show.
Please.
Bowling Green at Texas A&M.
Okay.
So Bowling Green fought Penn State in Beaver Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Only lost that one, I think, by a touchdown. Bowling Green was a team I called out in the preseason when I did the MAC preview. I think Bowling Green, is a pretty good team. That's not to say they're going to go into Kyle Field and win. I do think they'll fight. The point spread right now is 22 points. I would probably err on the side of Bowling Green, even though it's in Kyle Field.
Right.
It's not particularly a look-ahead situation for a team like Texas A&M. They've got Arkansas the following week.
I mean, it's kind of a sandwich situation, though, right?
But it kind of is, right? It's not a full-blown look-ahead or letdown, but it's innocuous looking enough that you could definitely construct an argument for a 14-point Texas A&M win.
Right, a cover, right? I think Mike Elko's too good a coach, and there's too much on this A&M team to feel a big threat, especially after Bowling Green gave Penn State all it could handle for 2 or 3 quarters.
Yep.
So, or the entire game, really. So,
I think
you're right.
Something to keep your eye on.
Sure.
As we talk about those late games that maybe get lost in the shuffle. We probably won't have time to do the full preview of that one, but I don't know. Just bear that game in mind, okay?
Bearing it in mind, Ty.
That is all I have, boys and girls.
So what's your answer for my original question then?
What was the original question?
What leftover food is actually better left over than fresh?
Pad Thai is really good leftover.
Okay. Do you cold or do you reheat it?
I do the reheat. Pad Thai.
There are some elements of cold, like Thai food, Chinese food that are so good.
I would Pad Thai comes to mind first.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that reheated chili is really good.
Give those flavors time to mix around. Yeah.
Depending how you reheat the pizza.
No, pizza's not an answer at all. But I respect you as all the same.
If you do it in the oven, it can be just as good the day after.
I think it's one of your worst takes ever.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
It's okay.
We disagree.
Okay.
We're different people.
Yeah.
I had another thought. I'm blanking. What's your answer?
I mentioned brownies, right? Like, they're a pan of hot brownies is delicious, of course.
Brownies are better cold. They're way better cold.
I'm saying they're delicious all the same. Like, they're still good.
Sure.
But you give them, I don't know where you store your brownies, whether it's like a Tupperware or you just put a thing of foil over the pan and set it aside, or put it in a cold oven, however you store your leftover. Like, it's so much better that next day.
Oh, it's not even close. I put them in the fridge. I like them
chili,
cold.
I think, is probably like the apex answer here.
Chili's great warmed up. It's fantastic.
Well, I'm not even saying I'm just saying it's so much better when it has time to sit even longer. So yeah,
I agree with that.
That's my answer. I love a good like second, third day chili.
So what is the ask from our verballerhood? The ask is tell one friend.
Tell one friend. Pillow talk, regular talk, when you're in a dentist chair, whatever it is.
Tell one friend.
I'm going to tell a pillow talk story gone wrong on our Thursday bonus show for Verballers at verballers.com.
Gone wrong? Does it?
Yeah.
Does it involve trying to recommend our podcast?
No.
Good.
It does not. It has nothing. It's fully G-rated, to be clear.
Okay.
But pillow talk, I actually have a couple pillow talks gone wrong.
Look at this guy. All right. Pillow Talk Thursday coming your way at verballers.com.
That's right.
Go and sign up
and
check it out. We will have a new Run the Board game set up for this coming week. We have yet to announce the prize. We'll do that on the Thursday episode. But game's been going great. People have really been into it. We've had more entries this year than ever before. Every week, play for fabulous prizes. That is the way this works. Go to playruntheboard.com for details. Any paid tier on our Patreon, whether you're a certified or a premium verballer, you get access to the game. Play for the prizes, play against Verballerhood, and against Dan and I and all the people that help the show.
Please, would love to have you behind the scenes.
For that guy over there, my good friend, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, thanks for downloading, for listening, for playing along at home, for supporting the show, for telling one friend. Talk to y'all on Thursday. Stay solid.
Peace.